Welcome to the Holy Spirit's Curriculum of Joy podcast. My name is Monica Oberhuber and I'm your host. My guest today is MaryBeth Scalice. Welcome to the podcast and I'm so happy to have you here.
So much. It's really good to be here and to see you again. It's been a while. Yeah. Thanks for inviting me.
Very welcome. And I'd like to start with a question that I like to ask my guests is, how did you come to see the world the way you do today?
Well, you could say that I came to see the world through woundedness, that it began to open my eyes to a love or a power that would have me see differently than the way I had been seeing. That, I would say, woundedness broke my heart open. And caused me to search for God, for myself. I can tell you the story of that if it's interesting to you. I think the story of woundedness and suffering is familiar to every one of us. And it is, for many of us, not too many of us find God or love or who we are through happiness or some kind of quick trip to enlightenment. Most of us have an experience, and the experience is impetus to asking questions like, who am I? And what is this place? And how can I be happy? And for me, a lot of it was, how can I forgive and live again? My experience was one of relationship and the ending of a relationship. And Marianne Williamson says, kind of like the wrecking ball of karma, changing everything. And that, of course, had happened to me just about the time that I found A Course in Miracles. I don't think it's a coincidence. And in the finding of the Course in Miracles, I seemed to be given a choice, and the choice was choose love, right? Choose faith, choose hope, choose yourself, or choose to die. And in that period of time, I began to hear the voice for love. The voice for love for me was the voice of Jesus. And it was not accidental that I needed, in a sense, a kind of masculine God voice at that time. This was many years ago, to help me begin to trust not only men again, but also to see how I had projected onto God all of my bad thoughts about men and their not being trustworthy and much more. But it was a beautiful time in which I began to write down the experiences I was having as I was listening to this voice for love, doubting tremendously, and yet it was so compelling. It was so moving, so beautiful. The voice came as poetry, living, breathing poetry.
That's a beautiful journey to go from woundedness to hearing the voice for love. So wonderful. So what were the keys that came through? Because it must have been going through a lot of pain, like since you spoke of woundedness. And how did the forgiveness journey, how did that process go? Because you must have had a lot to forgive to be able to hear the voice for love then.
Yes. Well, it was a process, and it was a process of many, what I would call conversations with Christ, which were beautiful assurances that helped me put an end to doubt and increase my faith. Many assurances about who I am and my potentiality. I was tired and spent and broken and untrusting and unwilling and resistant. And yet I had great love. It was the love I had put into my marriage and into my family. Jesus very gently and tenderly met me in the place of the woundedness, almost seducing me to listen, to trust, to deepen in this relationship with Him. And as I did, what came were many channels, 13 of which have been put into a book form, not yet published, but I expect it will be, which really began to teach me about the meaning of specialness, about the reality of unworthiness and the ego, and this movement, this gentle movement into unity, oneness, trust. And there are many. I mean, I could read you the very first one of the channels that came. If you have the time to do that, it's about 1.5 minutes of reading, I think.
Sure, if you want to.
Let me grab it here. I wasn't really expecting to go back to this today, but every time I go back to it, my heart softens and remembers, and it's just wonderful for me. So this was what is called the first intimacy. Herein lies the word. It is for you, given to those who doubt, but linger in the ache that cries out for God. Because you have opened it, it will be given to you, to keep and to share. Because you have sought for love, love has answered. Love seeks your faith now. Faith in love to give you what you seek. Faith in love to fulfill you. Faith to designate your purpose and complete the work of your lifetime. Faith in love to love you unto peace. Love wishes to give you everything, but you must give your faith to love to receive it. It is no idle thing asked of you. It is God asking you to enter into a holy relationship with Him, her, through the one called Christ. Will you read on? Will you say yes? Will you close your eyes in this moment and feel your heart leap with the wanting for these words to be true? These words may bless you as the first words you ever truly heard. Let your heart absorb them. Let your mind open to them. Let your being be filled with wonder. Let me be trusted by giving your faith to them as possibility. You need do nothing. I don't wish to take anything from you. I want to give you incomprehensible joy. I will to make my love known to you. I want you to experience the love of your life, the love you were created to know, to be, to give. This is your invitation. It moves me right back into the place where I am on my knees wanting to choose love, having such a hard time with it, receiving the invitation, saying yes, and all through the process, even as I was hearing the words, as soon as the words stopped, I would forget. I would forget what they said. I would not believe that God was speaking to me. I would doubt that I was sane. And yet it went on, and some would say that this is a nuptial kind of relationship I had with Jesus, which is, it's been said that it's special, and yet I believe truly that Jesus appears to us in the form we most need. And when you have been rejected in relationship, as many of us have, Jesus appears as the voice that says, that seduces your trust again, right? Exactly in the imagery that you need. It's real and it's true and it's beautiful. This happened 20 years ago now, and my relationship with Jesus now is still a romance, but somewhat different. At that time, I was, just the receiver and the one who was broken, and Jesus was the teacher, right? Jesus was the master. Jesus was the one who, I was frightened of, right? Such a power, so beautiful. Today, I would say that the two that seem to be there, and the journey is this, have become one. We share one heart. That the voice that I hear is my own voice, as well as Jesus' voice, Mary's voice. It's the voice of the Christ. When the heart opens to this consummation or this communion, then we lose these boundaries of who's the weak one and who's the strong one. That in forgiveness, and the forgiveness is not only of those who wound us, but the forgiveness is of God, because we believe that this God outside of us, particularly early on in our journeys, has failed us, has rejected us in the being rejected by the world, by a partner, by a boss, by anyone, right? And we project that rejection onto God rejecting us, God abandoning us, and God not being there for us. And what begins to happen as we forgive God I had to forgive God for being a man. I had to forgive Jesus for showing up in the world in the form or the body, of the masculine. And the boundaries, in that forgiveness work, the boundaries gently fall away. And for me, Jesus is in perpetual reminders that I am loved, that I am worthy, that I have gifts, his gifts, her gifts, Christ's gifts, which beg to be shared, beg to be given, that my light in this world is as needed as Jesus' life was, is as radiant, and is as purposeful in fulfilling the plan for this earth, which is suffering a great deal right now.
Yeah, it's really a beautiful encounter and joining, and to discover a joint will, right? A joint purpose, I think, is one of the most powerful things you can experience in a relationship, right? And to say the divine, being it the divine, means that it's a purpose that joins everyone in truth, even if we're not aware of it at times. So I think that's a really powerful statement. So maybe you'd like to share a little more about this, this deep connection of being joined and how that informs the way you live your life, because it's a different way of seeing the world, because we were speaking about how did you come to see the world the way you do today. So you're seeing the world differently through different eyes, I could say, or joint eyes. I don't know how you put it, but anyways, it's a different way of seeing things.
It is truly a different way of seeing things. It is a way of seeing from the heart instead of from the mental constructs and paradigms that we tend to live with very routinely. And to see with the heart is to include all of God's creation in your holy relationship and in your conversation with God. It sounds trite to say, to see with the heart is to let love look through your eyes, because often we don't know what that means. Love has become so trite, so distilled by ego, that we are kind of clueless as to what it means. But as you join with what I would call authentic presence and being within you, there is no question but you must love. You cannot resist love. It's as if in that unifying moment you choose, and you choose for always, and there's no going back, that your purpose and your function is to fulfill the heart, which must embrace and include everyone in justice, in peace, in harmonizing, in forgiving. Once I call it consummation. It's this immingling, might be the word, which again ends the boundaries between your love and God's love, your choice and God's choice, your will and God's will. You can't go back. You can try to go back. You'll find that, you're judging something in the world. And that judgment is suddenly so painful. It's not like before where you could hide from yourself the lies that you have used to protect your specialness or your desire to be more or better or to exclude others. Forgiveness is different too. Forgiveness is not a mea culpa. Forgiveness is a mere return to at-one-ment, right? And that's all we're given to do. And that at-one-ment provides the view of everything we need to see. The vision of unity is a vision of others as yourself. That when you, in my languages, marry Jesus or God or Mary, it's not a marriage like we have in the world. It's not a fidelity just to the personhood of Jesus or the personhood of the Father or the personhood of the Mother. It is a fidelity to the Christ in every being. And that fidelity is a way, I guess I'd say, of being married to the soul of all humanity, all being. Now, I want to say, and I don't want to make this sound like I am a perfectly forgiving, non-judgmental human being, but I am receiving the integration of the divine into my being in greater and greater amounts. Amounts is not even in greater magnitude. And as we, as human beings, let go of the idea of the separation between humanity and divinity and are willing to let our personhood receive the gifts, the creativity, the love, all that God would give, we do find that we are in the world with a different kind of sensitivity, sensory knowing, right? It's not just 5 senses anymore. The body has its own intuitive knowing, right? The unity of human and divine is a nexus of all potentiality for mankind, womankind, for all creation. And in it, in that nexus is everything we could ever possibly need. All our joy, all our hope, making the world we live in a happy and beautiful place. And to say that during these times of such turbulence and hatred and violence and separation, for me is to say, experience like the invitation
So we lost you for a moment. So you can turn on your video and microphone again. MaryBeth, can you hear me?
I'm here. So I don't know what happened there. I think some comments were being made perhaps, and whatever happened, it happened. So all of this comes, I guess I would say, for me, through surrender. That the surrender is never over. That each day is a willingness to rest completely in God. To give your life completely to a holy instant that is eternal. To be devoted to the gifts and the path and the hearing that come to you, to share them, to live them, to undo doubt in the deep, deep places where they're hidden.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing this more deeply, because I don't know, it's hard to imagine how deep faith can go, right? Or trust, because I know I'm not there, right? Both in that very trusting place yet. But I think it's so beautiful to have examples of people who know how to go deeper in the trust journey. And yeah, what would you, so you said you started out with being wounded and then being broken and then being opening up to there being a presence there that could help you. And then you go through all these processes, and now you're in a place where you're joined with a presence of love, and that you go even deeper there. It's continuing to deepen. I think that's very significant. And another, when I think about it, is how do you make step by step? What are the step by step way to go deeper? Because obviously this didn't happen overnight. It has been the way you've been sharing it. So it took a long time. So you must have been getting a little more forgiving, a little more this, a little more that, step by step. And so that it's something that anyone can do if they're willing to make these step by step, going through it step by step. So maybe you'd like to give us a little about that so that we can perhaps start from where we are at in the trust journey, in the faith journey.
Well, that's a wonderful question. I'm going to tell you that I am still, faith and trust is still something that I continue to step into deeper and deeper. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing lately, and then I'll go back to the step-by-step from long ago. So, you said it, faith is imperative. We cannot be truly, I would say, useful, creative, useful with an F-U-L-L at the end, useful. We cannot be truly servicing in this world unless we have great faith in Christ, right? In everything that we've been given, in the Word of God. The Word of God to me is and has been the foundation for my faith. And I would say that I began to recognize the truth through words which had this heart resonance, through words which pierced me, which made my heart sing or go, ah, like almost like, wow, that is like, I can't, there's no mental concept for that. And giving faith to that. A Course in Miracles and the workbook is a step-by-step movement into the development of trust. And I have done it so many times in my 30 years of doing it. But even now, so of late, what I've been telling folks and what I've done myself is I got a little piece of paper and I wrote on it, I sifted and sorted through what I felt were my deepest desires, what I really, really, really wanted. And of course, like all of us, I have desires like, well, I want to be happy, or I want to be, I want to have enough money, or, oh, I want my, community to all be healthy and growing. And finally I came to this kernel, and the kernel was, dear God, increase my faith exponentially. And I wrote it down. Increase my faith exponentially. And then I put it under my pillow. Now, some would think this is nuts, but I put it there so that every time I went to bed, it would be there. And I would remember what I truly want. And when I woke up in the morning, it would be there or somewhere in the sheets, depending upon my restlessness. And I would read it again. Jesus, increase my faith exponentially, because the continuing increase in faith and trust, the end of that pathway is knowing. And knowing is everything. Knowing is complete unity with Christ, with God, with true self, with love, with happiness, with abundance, with all those things. Through this little thing, the choice to keep my eye on God, on God's promises, on the miracles I've received, on the words that come through my mouth. I didn't prepare. I don't know. Nothing. No clue about what I'm about to say or try to fulfill someone's need. I just have faith. And faith to me is the greatest power. My greatest need. If you think about where we put our faith and how much faith we put in things of the world, right? Just silly stuff, People are going to drive on the right side of the road today, so I'm safe. Or the sun is going to come up, and whatever. We have given unconditional faith to these things, which are not real. They aren't our true safety or security. Our true safety and security is in the source of all that is.
That's a very important point, is to look at where our safety lies, where our true safety lies. And yes, there's very big discrepancies in how people perceive that, as you were saying, seeing the safety in things of the world, seeing one's safety in something that is not of the world, but is our source, right? Whatever we call it, whether we say God or whatever else, that is a huge shift. To say, okay. And I think it's so interesting that there's so many people, many different people say they have faith, right? But what is their faith in? And I think that's a very important question. Is it, and because it might be, okay, I have faith in a certain book or in a certain set of thought system or a certain this or that, and then to go from, I remember when I was studying anthropology, there's this big difference between not knowing and knowledge. And you were speaking of knowing. Now, knowing is something totally different than knowledge, even though it has the same roots in the word.
This is beautiful what you're saying, that knowing has nothing to do with learning. It has nothing to do with, as you say, books or courses. Knowing has to do with joining. All knowledge comes from joining. So that when I wish truly to know you, or to know anybody who is here in the room, the way I would know you is not by asking you, well, where do you come from, and what do you do for a living, and do you have any children? The way that I would know you is as God knows me. It's by utterly giving, receiving, and giving, right? A kind of relationship where giving and receiving are one, and all knowing is in that joining, in that. To join with you, I give myself. I give my presence. I open my heart. I give my attention, right? Even if you're not in the room, I can join with you. And together, in that flow, there is something more. That something more is knowing. That something more is the realization, not only of you, but of us, right? As one, as merged, as intermingling, as a wholeness, as real. When I join in a way that many of us have joined in our lives at parties or in the workplace, without real willingness to know another, we feel shallowness, we feel separate, we feel mistrusting, afraid, boundaries, resistance. We feel like we don't know.
Yeah, I think one of the parts of A Course in Miracles is also this process to learn how to rejoin, right? Because we are joined, but to recognize the joining, that already is there, but we're not tuning into who we are. We're tuning into who we are not most of the time. Doesn't mean that we lose ourselves, but it means that we're not in awareness of who we are at that time.
I love your saying rejoining, right? Rejoining, and the recognition that we've never separated in truth. We could not separate in truth. God has one Son, and we are altogether it. And so how could we be separate? And yet, rejoining is really having choice. God has given us, because we asked for it, freedom to choose for ourselves, to love or to fear, wholeheartedness or separation. And I think that's the place where most of us begin, having an experience where we have a choice, fear or love. And we decide that we are going to choose for love. And in so doing, experience a miracle, a synchronicity, a knowing, a deepening, a holiness of other, a correction. In the beginning of my practice, I would sit every day and look inside deeply with Christ and see the trickery and the delusions that I was living. And they weren't necessarily bad things. They were ignorances. They were putting your faith and trust in things that are not worthy of the trust or faith of a child of God. They were, they were thoughts and ideas that minimized me, diminished me, depressed me. And so doing kept me from even knowing I had a choice to choose love. And so for me, this process of sifting and sorting through, the thought system that was so afraid, so intimidated, was essential. It still is. Now it's much different. I just look quickly and know, oh, that's illusion, that's not truth. And I choose love again.
Did it take a long time to get to that where you could choose quickly? Because, of course, at the beginning you had that experience. That doesn't mean that you were able to choose love consistently from that moment on.
Absolutely. It took a long time. But that is the journey for most of us. And no one likes to say it. We like to think that we're going to wake up in an instant, and some people do wake up in an instant. I feel that there was awakening in me very early on, an experience of God and hearing the voice for God and knowing that was truth. And yet, it took me, I would go back to sleep in a sense, even though I knew it and loved it, and that was the only thing I desired. I would sit on the couch, send my kids off to school, and I would sit on the couch and I would just spend hours and hours listening, being with, because it was so beautiful. The poetry just moved me, and I cried and I cried and I processed and I listened. And I had awakening, but I needed to keep at it, keep deepening my faith, keep denying my doubt. And it took, I'd say, 10 years before I was able to really say that my devotion had brought me to a place of knowing just this simple: I am loved and I love.
Wow, so this listening again and again, choosing to listen to the voice for love or to this joining that you had experienced, was that a conscious, so it sounds like it was a conscious choice to say, I'm going to listen and sit and listen, because you could also say, I want to listen, and then you don't hear it, right? So the question is, it must have been a very, very, very conscious choice. But I think what I'm trying to get at is that many times you want to hear that voice, but you don't, right? For many people, that's the experience. It doesn't come. So there must be something that is in the way, or something that is keeping you from hearing that voice, even though you think you want to, or you're saying you want to.
Yes. Two things. So my woundedness increased my desire for what I had always believed as a little girl, that love was the only power there is, that love was real, and I wanted it. And I, like everybody else, did not hear that voice right from the beginning. In fact, I remember having a traumatic experience of listening. I was in the throes of a hostile divorce, and my husband wanted the house and the children and wanted me to move to an apartment. And I did not want that. I wanted to stay here with my children in there and keep them in their community. And I will just say that it was a miraculous thing, because as people do in divorce, you divide things up, and this is what one half of our assets looks like, and this is what the other half looks like. Well, I didn't do any dividing. My husband, who is my dear friend, I want you to know right now, we are so dear friends, like 40 years friends. But at that time, his fear had caused him to create a scenario where he would have this house and much more. And I kept asking the Holy Spirit, God, I can't hear you. What do you want me to do? I really, really desire to be in the house. How do I handle this? And I cried and I wept. I heard nothing. And then I just got this sense, finally, that I wasn't supposed to fight and that I was supposed to offer him the house. And and so I called him up, trembling. I couldn't believe I was doing it. I heard the voice. The very first time it sounded like a voice, and it sounded broken up. It just was crazy. And all it said was, trust. Like it was trying to break through. It was not poetry. It was not like it is now. It was this voice, trust, right? And I did. And so I called my ex-partner and said, he didn't answer the phone. I left a message. I said, okay, I'll go move into an apartment. One of the apartments, we owned a number of them. And you can stay here with the kids. You can have this half and I'll have the apartments, and we'll settle that way. And I was totally bereft and broken up. And within an hour, he called me back and said, oh, no. You have to have the house. I have to have the apartments and run the business. It was like this total turnaround that I couldn't see. I didn't know what we had. I didn't know about apartments. I didn't know anything. I was meek, very, very meek. And so this letting go and daring to trust by giving up what I wanted the most resulted in my having it. And again, that is kind of the way it works. When we harbor an attachment to something, that attachment keeps us from seeing what is beyond what we hold on to so tightly, thinking it is, a prize, a treasure, our goodness, a must-have, the best thing in my life, right? And when we are willing to say, I trust you with this, and I don't know what to do, show me, here's the faith, right? I am never disappointed. I am never disappointed. I always get more than what I asked for or what I could have conceived might be an outcome, a positive outcome, a beautiful outcome, a happiness, a harmony, and even things.
Wow, that's a very poignant example. So it's coming to a time where we need to wrap up. So is there a question that you would like to leave us with, or is there an answer you want to leave us with?
I would like to leave you with a question. And the question is this: what do you truly desire? Truly, truly, truly desire. What is it that your heart longs for? What is it that calls out from deep inside you to be made manifest? What do you truly, truly want?
That is so beautiful. I think we will all be having a wonderful time thinking about that, and maybe sometimes struggle with it. But anyways, all of it is valid. And so thank you so much for asking that question. Thank you for being here. Thank you everyone who has joined us at whatever time you do. Thank you so much. Please spread the word about the podcast, subscribe to it. And if you want to be a guest, please reach out to me. So blessings to you all. Until next time.
You bless me. Thank you so much. This was a joy.
You're very welcome, and thank you.